This is Rob Powell, and today in Turbo Talk we're talking to Simon Clarke of EF Pro Cycling about the World Championships. And welcome back to the Turbo Talks podcast. It is Thursday, the 24th of September. The Tour de France is already behind us and we're already on to the next great cycling event on a loaded calendar. Because this weekend the riders switch their team colours for the national colours in Imola in Italy. It is World Championships time, and today's guest will be swapping the EF pink for Australia's green and gold this Sunday. You've guessed it, it is Simon Clarke of EF Pro Cycling. Welcome Simon, thanks for joining us. How are you going?
Hi guys, thanks a lot for having me.
You are currently traveling to Imola.
Yeah, that's right. Just on my way down today, so looking forward to getting out on the circuit before the men's time trial tomorrow and cutting a few laps.
Because you've been staying in Italy for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I've been having raced in doing since the racing recommenced. I've only raced in Italy, so I've been staying here to try and avoid as much travel as possible. And with the Worlds coming up this weekend, I stayed here after Tirreno-Adriatico in preparation for Worlds.
And coming off Tirreno-Adriatico, you also come off a big crash that you had in stage 5. You cut your eyelid open, lost a lot of skin, pretty banged up.
Yeah.
How are you going?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a pretty good run with crashes. Before this last week, I can't even. I think I have to go back to some stage of last season when I last crashed. So I was quite unexpected. I wasn't taking any risks. I just hit quite an ugly bump in the middle of a corner, and it sent me flying. And next thing, I was on the ground and all banged up, and we were going quite fast. So although I didn't break anything, I really felt like I hit every muscle in my body when I landed on the ground. So I've probably some of the sorest I've ever been after a crash. Just so many bruises and bumps. So it took a good week or so for me to feel normal again on the bike. But I'm glad I got through Tirreno with good Worlds preparation. So it was important as long as I was okay to finish that race off and complete a good block leading up to Imola Worlds this weekend.
Yeah, because you still did a fair bit of work for Mike Woods after that crash. Looked pretty heroic. Can you describe sort of like what's that process, what your body is going through to recover from a crash like that? Like you mentioned, like you've just been sore for like a week. But how much energy does that take up?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think age also has a lot to do with it because I never remember, I've had plenty of big enough crashes over my career, and I've never felt as sore as I have after the crash last week. So I think maybe as your body gets a bit older, it doesn't take these bumps as good as it used to. So I came home and I was 4 kilos heavier than when I was before the crash, just from inflammation and and whatnot. So I basically spent the last 10 days trying to de-inflate. So I've got back to where I was before Tirreno, so that's all good. But I mean, your body just swells up and goes into defensive mode when you take such a hit like that. So I went to the physio every day for the week after I got home and got some good treatment.
And what did it do to your good legs? What you said you had a decent block in Italy so far up the racing. How are the legs leading up now to the Worlds?
Yeah, I've just spent the last week, I spent the first 5 or so days just recovering and crash management, looking after my body, and then I was able to step back into full training and start my Worlds preparation with a few more good training sessions and some motor pacing leading up to leaving today.
So was your ride with Cadel yesterday also a bit of motor pacing, or were you motor pacing Cadel?
I had quite a long ride yesterday, so he came out and did the first couple of hours with me, and I did some he'll repeats on some of his favourite climbs actually. So we did a few laps around his old training ground, and then he headed home, and I did a bit of a longer loop, and then met up with a friend who took me out behind the scooter, and we did a bit of a fast hour to finish off the day. So it worked out well. It's always good to catch up with Cadel. My first pro worlds was in 2009 when I rode for Cadel. So I've got very fond memories of riding world championships with him. And getting any little bit of advice from someone like that can really make a huge difference for you when you're riding with someone who's won the race you're about to go and do.
I was just about to ask, did he have any special tips for riding the worlds and how to become a world champion? Can you share a little bit of his advice?
I can share a little bit, I suppose. No, we just talked a bit about who would be the key guys to watch, and particularly the key countries. I think Belgium probably has the strongest team on paper this year, and so that will be quite interesting to see how they decide to play out the race. Obviously, Italy will be very motivated, but I don't know if they have quite the depth that Belgium have. So it will be interesting to see how those two countries play off each other. And then, we just talked about the course and how it's going to be a real race of attrition, really. And it's just going to be survival and sit back and hide and wait out until the last couple of laps. Because I think on such a demanding course like that, you can't afford to be stepping on the pedals too early because you'll run out of gas pretty quickly.
Yeah, so for our listeners, 258.2 kilometers over 5,000 meters of altitude, so elevation, I should say. So a lot of climbing in there, 9 laps, 2 longer climbs. You haven't ridden it yet, but you've probably already had a good look at the map. So would it be like something then for climbers or for the puncheurs? What do you reckon?
My prediction, I haven't ridden it, but we have a really good program we use called Velo Viewer, and we can pretty much, virtually analyze it from Google Earth, and then from the map, it shows us all the gradients and all the corners. So I've gone through the whole 28-kilometer course scrolling through on Google Earth. So I've virtually seen all the descents and the climbs and the corners coming into the climb. So I kind of know what to expect. I just need to get out there and try it. The most interesting thing for me will be to see the false flat sections on the top of both of the climbs.
Yeah.
So both of the climbs kind of finish, and then there's no real descent immediately, and it's quite undulating and flat, and particularly on top of the second climb, Galisterna, I think it's called. It looks really open. So I'm just interested to really look at how open that top section is, and how affected it'll be by the wind and whatnot, because that will obviously play a key role. Although from the weather forecast, it looks like there's probably going to be a northerly wind in the later part of Sunday, which will mean it's a headwind coming back on that second half of the lap, which will also make it interesting and something to consider.
And what about the rest of the course? I think it's pretty narrow and it's not really flat anywhere almost on the circuit. I think the predictions are also that it's going to rain a bit. How is that going to influence the race? Is it going to be tricky and more dangerous, or what do you reckon about that?
If it rains, it's definitely going to be more dangerous. There's no question about that. But, the roads do look reasonably narrow from what I've seen on Google Earth. But, there's plenty of races we do on narrow roads, so it's not like we're not used to this. And I suppose the one good benefit about the World Championships is being such a long race. By the time you actually get down to the final laps when the race really heats up, there's actually probably only half the bunch left in the race. And of that half, there's probably only half of them that have still got any energy left to push to be at the front of the group. So I don't think the narrow roads will play too much of a role in the course. Where the narrow roads will play an influence is by the fact that you could get out of sight of the bunch very quickly. So maybe you could have 10 or 15 seconds lead and already they can't see you because the roads are so narrow and windy. So that always plays a big role when you can get out of sight. So that would be something to consider.
And what if it would rain, like we saw last year in Yorkshire? Obviously, the rain and the cold having a bit of an impact. Might not be as cold as it was last year in Yorkshire, but if it's going to be that wet, what does that do to the body during a race like that over such a long period of time?
I mean, as long as it's not cold, then, it's just more about safety and being safe. A good comparison for that was the Florence Worlds in 2013, where it absolutely bucketed with rain, even more so than Yorkshire. But it wasn't cold, so we weren't there just frozen ice cubes on a bike trying to stay alive like we were in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So, obviously you need to eat a little bit more. Energy consumption is a little bit higher when it's raining, even if it's not cold. But the most important thing is just safety and highlighting riding in a safe place in the bunch and, keeping space between you and other guys. So if people do make mistakes or crashes, you're able to avoid them and not be caught out by potentially other people's mistakes. And then, just highlighting dangerous parts on the course where, corners can get quite slippery and dangerous, obviously, when the roads are wet. So I've looked at the forecast, and from what I've seen, it shouldn't rain before about 5 o'clock currently with the forecast. So I'm not actually sure the exact estimated finish time of the race, but
I think around 5-ish, I think.
So I think we could be pretty lucky, and if we're unlucky, it might be only the last lap or maybe the last 2 laps where we could get some wet roads, so, which would make it for a very interesting final. We'll have to wait and see.
But I think you did a race earlier this year in France where it only rained for the last hour, and that turned out pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if I can keep on that trend, that would be fantastic. I think the stakes are a little bit higher for this one, but I definitely. I mean, I don't say I enjoy racing in the rain, but I don't have, it doesn't. My body, I don't switch off mentally and count myself out once it starts raining. So I think that's the most important thing in these bad conditions, is just to stay motivated and focus on keep focus on what you're there to do, and that's to try and win and ride technically well so that you can set yourself up for the best result possible. And the problem with rain and bad weather is people lose that focus and start worrying about the fact that the weather's crap and that's where they lose the race. So it's important just to stay focused, and although it might be uncomfortable that it's wet and potentially cold, you need to try and block that out and stay focused on the goal for the day.
And have you already been in touch with Brett McGee, the national coach, about possible tactics? Or are you going in as a leader with a free role? Because you obviously also have Richie, who's coming off a great Tour de France. Michael Bling Matthews might be in for a good one. Have you guys talked about that, or?
We will talk about that in more depth tonight, once all the riders get in. But yeah, we've got some really good cards to play with myself and Richie and Michael Matthews. And I think the beauty of that is that we're 3 completely different bike riders, and so we can play 3 different cards quite effectively. And I think that will be quite interesting to go in on Sunday with with a good tactic like that with some different options.
So you already mentioned like the Belgium squad is one to watch, obviously with a really strong team. How would you compare like the Aussie squad to theirs? Is it like just below or?
It's a bit hard to say, really. You look at form-wise, and someone can be in better form than another person, but maybe they're less suited to the course. So it's hard to compare. If you're better off taking someone who's a little bit less in form, but is better suited to a course than someone who's, in really good form, that the course might be a little bit too hard for, or, needs someone who needs longer climbs or whatnot. So I think we've both got strong teams, obviously, with different characteristics, and each team needs to play a broad tactics, considering the characteristics of the riders that they have on hand.
And what is then is there still an influence of team versus country as well? Like for example, if Michael Woods or Rigo or Higita is up the road in the final lap, or are they attacking? Are you going after them?
Of course.
Are you the first one to close the gap, or?
Yeah, no. I mean, I won't chase them down just because they're my teammates, but I ride 100% for my Australian jersey and my Australian flag, and under no consideration will I ever look up the road and see a teammate and think twice. I'm just there. I don't race. I find that I don't think many pro bike riders start races trying to race other people in the bunch. You try and race the race the way, for yourself and the way that you plan to race it. And if that turns out that there's teammates involved in the final where you are, then that's just the way it is. But I don't think anyone goes into a race going, I just want to race and beat this guy or race off this guy. It's like, okay, this is the plan. You go down to this lap, and when this attack goes, whether it's this country or this country, this is the one we need to be following. And so yeah, for one weekend, I don't even, to be honest, I don't even really consider the riders for which teams they ride for this weekend. That's completely irrelevant for me.
Oh, okay, I'm always wondering if it's sometimes you get the feeling when you're watching at home. Sometimes you think like, oh, there's like a team thing that's going on as well at the same time. But
yeah, I mean, maybe with some countries with closer links to their pro teams, maybe. But I think Australians are pretty proud to ride for their jersey every time they do, and I don't think anyone in the Aussie team would ever cross their mind to do something like that.
Yeah. So if we would you be able to make a prediction? Can you give us a podium for Sunday?
Yeah, good question. I think Van Aert is definitely going to be hard to beat. But the thing is, I think that I can see Belgium riding a very aggressive race, and that could potentially mean that their other key riders, Van Avermaet and whatnot, move early, and then that could result in Van Aert riding a defensive race and maybe not, and maybe supporting, riding to make sure one of his teammates stays away or whatnot. I think for me, the biggest outsider that no one talks about who's going really well at the moment is Kwiatkowski. And I think that he will definitely be an outside bet for the win, I think, particularly if it starts raining with 2 laps to go. He doesn't mind the wet, and he's going well at the moment. And he's a very proven one-day specialist who not many people have been talking about, I don't think. So I suppose I'd put Van Aert and Kwiatkowski, and let's say, Michael Matthews to the bunch sprint for third.
Okay. I was almost about to ask, like, would you be happy to, like last year in the Amstel Gold Race, you were behind a cyclocrosser, like behind Van der Poel. Well, you can't really call him a cyclocross rider anyway, but if you were to the line with him and he beating you for first, would you be happy if another cyclocross rider, Van Aert, would do the same at the Worlds?
I mean, it would have to be, obviously I never like coming second, I don't think any pro bike rider does. And if I was, it just depends on the circumstances though, because it was such unique circumstances in Amstel where I was 8th or 7th on the road with 3K to go, thinking I would be lucky, I'd just be happy to finish top 10. And if it wasn't for Van der Poel and the group behind of the 5 riders to catch me and then to pace, for us to work with them to then catch the front guys, I would never have even been sprinting for the win. And then it was really his efforts with about up the last drag, 2.5K to 2K to go, that really closed down in on the remaining guys in the front. And the only reason that we were sprinting for the win was because of Van der Poel himself and the efforts that he made. So when I finished second to him, I didn't feel like I'd lost the win, because if it wasn't for me, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have even been sprinting. Yeah. I wouldn't have, if he completely influenced the whole final of that race. And if you took that one rider out of that final, there would have been a completely different result. And you would have seen Alaphilippe and Fuglsang cat and mousing it and having a 2-up sprint for the win, and the rest of us would have come in behind. So, the reason I was, I suppose happy to come second, in Amstel was that it was such a better result than I was expecting to get.
Yeah.
At 3 kilometers to go, if you know what I mean.
Was there a fraction of a second in that sprint that you thought, I'm going to take this?
Look, I know how fast Mathieu van der Poel is, and I vividly remember watching his sprint in Brabantsterpil the Wednesday before Amstel, where he led the sprint out in front of Matthews and Alaphilippe, and they didn't even get close to him. So I knew how powerful he was, but I was just hoping that with the amount of effort that he put out to close those gaps that he did, firstly to me and Volker Mollema, and then to the front, and then to lead out our group for the sprint with 600 meters to go, I just thought to myself, if there's ever a time this guy's beatable in a sprint, it's probably now with a downhill sprint and a 600 meter lead out. And so I wasn't going in the sprint going, I'm going to beat this guy, but I was going in the sprint going, if I'm ever going to beat this guy, this is the closest I'm going to get. And I mean, I tried to come off him with 50 meters to go and kind of got next to him, but I wasn't really ever close to beating him. What he did that day was absolutely amazing.
So is that the race that you look forward to most after Worlds? If it goes ahead, actually. I think they're still just going to decide this week if it's going to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not up to speed with that. We're still finalising my program for now. Because I missed the Tour de France, I could potentially be going to the Giro instead, which will be great because I'm really looking forward to doing some extra racing, but obviously it'll be unfortunate to miss the classic season. So we just need to wait until the team makes a final decision on which way I go with my program, whether to stick with the one-day racing or if I go with the Giro. So once I know that, I'll be able to communicate where I'll be. But I mean, I always look forward to doing the Ardennes Classics no matter what. And to be honest, I'd be happy either way with whichever program the team decides to send me to. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, because obviously Flash Wallon is already on Wednesday and Liège is already next Sunday. and Gold Race would have been a week after. But it also sort of aligns with the Turbo Talks fan question that came in, because we put out a request for a fan question on our text social channels, and people at home definitely responded to that. There was a question from Ben Berry, and he wanted to know what are the biggest changes with training this year, and how has the race selection process changed?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, in terms of training, obviously we've had to really step up the amount of intensity we do at home, because we don't have any races that we can use to top up that intensity part of our training and preparation for our goals. So pretty much we've had to come into this block ready to race with a complete preparation, and that meant doing a lot of intensity training at home, a lot more so than we would normally do. But apart from that, I mean, we kind of, I suppose, just felt a little bit like triathletes that just do all their preparation and training at home, and then they rock up and race, and they're ready to perform on day one. So it's changed the game a little bit for this year, but I think the important thing to remember is that everyone's in the same situation. We're all in the same boat. So you're not competing against someone who's had 70 race days and you've had 10. So it's quite a level playing field, I think.
So, and how was that for you when you were spent lockdown in Andorra? Doing obviously a lot of the training, maybe the intensity blocks as well on the text trainer. How was that for you?
Yeah, I got pretty friendly with my Tax Neo, that's for sure. I did pretty much 8 weeks every day on my Tax trainer out on my terrace, and I mean, I just went kind of back into a maintenance phase, so I wasn't smashing out, exaggerated days on the trainer, but just enough to keep the body under a bit of stress that I kept a certain amount of condition, so that when I did step the training back up, I was in a fit enough condition that I could do so without having to start from square one again.
Yeah, and after all that building, now you've got the good legs to play a big role on Sunday, hopefully.
Yeah, that's it. Ready to go.
All right, time to wrap it up. We'll leave you to it on your way to Imola. Have a safe trip.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a great weekend. I think that Italy, every time we have a Worlds in Italy, it's always a very special race. And if I look back, having done Worlds in 2008 in Varese as an under-23, and actually also in 2004 as a junior in Verona, and then in Florence in 2013, this will actually be my 4th World Championships in Italy. So I've always enjoyed doing World Championships in Italy, and I'm looking forward to this weekend as much as ever.
And is the wife even looking forward to it because it's in Italy, in her home country?
I mean, for her, it's neither here nor there. My family doesn't come to my races, so they support me from home, and I'm just going to pop down for the weekend and ride a couple of 100K, and then I'll be back on Monday.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's hope you will return on Monday then with a medal, or at least one for your teammates. So you definitely would have a good weekend. So thanks again. We're going to wrap it up. But not before a quick reminder to our listeners to subscribe to the Turbo Talks podcast, tell a friend, and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps us getting other cycling fans to listen to the insights of riders like Simon. So thanks again for joining us, Simon. Look forward to following you on Sunday and the rest of the season.
No worries. Thanks very much for having me, and I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, and maybe they can be listening to it on their Tax Neo, punching out another post-work or pre-work session, and looking forward to chatting again with you guys soon.
All right, awesome. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you never stop cycling. This was Rob Bouw with Simon Clarke of EF Pro Cycling. Stay tuned for the next Turbo Talks.